I ended a long friendship with Bella and Lila over their choice to invite a girl I disliked to hangouts and couldn't handle the backlash. This is quite lengthy, so please bear with me. I have two former friends who were once very close to me until the end of our friendship. To provide some context, I will explain our experiences together. At this point, I had known Bella, a fictitious name, for 2 years and Lila, another fictitious name, for about a year. I met Bella through my school's theater program and was part of another friend group that included 4 other kids. I later met Lila through Bella. For a while, we formed one large friend group until various dramas began to unfold. Jamie, another member of our group, became a significant issue. At the time, she was dating a boy named Rob, who is now my boyfriend, and treated him poorly. Furthermore, she started cheating on him with Bella's ex-boyfriend, who was also abusive and manipulative. Jamie even fabricated a story about being sexually assaulted, but I will spare the details. The point is that Jamie is not a good person. This entire situation escalated, ultimately dissolving our friend group over time. Bella, Lila, and I pretended to remain friends with Jamie for a while, but ended the friendship with her over a phone call in July 2024. After all of that, Bella, Lila, and I supported each other and spent time together as best friends. Now, let's fast forward to the present. 2 months ago, I noticed that they were not responding much to my texts in the group chat or individually. Occasionally, I would send a message in the group chat since I wanted to catch up. I discussed this situation with Rob and had conversations with both Bella and Lila separately, which went relatively well. I spoke with Bella more often because she has a busier schedule than most people. Eventually, I decided to forgive her in my mind, hoping that she would try harder. I asked Lila to call me one night after she expressed that she missed me, but I never received a call. This occurred during winter break, so I understood the distractions of the holidays. I chose to stop responding to the group chat for a bit to assess the situation, but nothing changed. Not knowing what else to do, I began to keep to myself, but still interacted with them normally during school. A few weeks later, they invited me to hang out on Martin Luther King Jr. Day. My strict parents rarely allow me to go out, so I was surprised they agreed. Both Bella and Lila were friends with a girl named Brenda, whom I do not particularly like. She had previously been unkind to me and had posted hurtful things about me, leading me to block her and move on. It was said that she had changed and was influenced by another girl, but I did not wish to be friends with her. That was fine with me. Despite not hating her, I simply didn't like her. Anyway, we were discussing Lila's house as a hangout spot when Lila mentioned inviting Brenda. Here's how the conversation unfolded. Lila, by the way, Brenda might be coming too. Bella, okay. Lila, I know she is not your favorite op, but you don't have to interact with her. Me, chill, everyone. I'm pretty sure I'm probably not going. Lila, okay. Bella, I suggested she come today, but she hasn't responded. Stay hopeful, be optimistic. Lila, I doubt Brenda will make it. Bella, I assumed as much. She isn't okay right now. Lila, yeah. Bella, I warned her about this guy. I hope she learns from this. Me, not cool, I guess. Me, I hope you both realize that putting me in a situation with someone I dislike and then suggesting I simply avoid her probably won't be effective, right? Lila, yeah, my bad. Bella, she probably isn't even coming. Me, probably me too, girl. Bella, stay optimistic. Me, once you have asked a million times, you just assume her mom says no. Bella, I get it. Me, if I can't go, maybe you could convince Brenda to stay away. Bella, but it's a good chance she'll be there this time. I have no idea what's going on with her. We need you there, boo. Me, all right, then I have a question. Both what? Me, how often do you two talk to Brenda? Bella, well, she's in our classes and on my bus, so quite a bit, I suppose. Lila, I'm not much of a texter. Bella, I don't text her outside of school. I only see her on the bus or in class. I don't text or call anyone anymore. Lila, even if I talk to her daily, I still care about you just as much. Me, okay. Lila, hey, I love you. Me, I can see you both not being big texters, so you decided to invite Brenda despite knowing I dislike her. Bella, I didn't invite her this time. I asked her earlier in the week to hang out today because she was upset about personal issues. Since she can walk to my house, I didn't realize Lila would ask her for tomorrow. Lila, I somewhat invited her for similar reasons. I thought you could just ignore her, even though it was not an ideal situation. Me, my point still stands. Inviting her when you knew it wouldn't go well for both of us was unwise. What you do with her apart from me is not my concern. Lila, to my knowledge, you and she are basically strangers, right? I apologize for not considering your feelings. I promise to do better, and next time I hang out with you, I won't invite Brenda. I have screenshots of the times she was unkind to me, so I don't think we're strangers. Lila, okay, I wasn't aware of that, and I sincerely regret it. It's fine, I can't go out anyway, so I probably won't see you tomorrow. Strict parents. I ended up going out, and thankfully, Brenda wasn't there. There were further discussions about planning. I later received a text from Lila saying the following: I want you to be honest, are you mad at me? I am dedicated to ensuring you feel comfortable around me and in my home, so Brenda will not be coming over tomorrow. I appreciate your willingness to express your feelings to me. I love you. I don't require a response. I just wanted you to be aware of how I feel and to apologize. I ended up not replying. I ignored it initially, then forgot to respond later. While we were hanging out, we didn't discuss it, so I assumed the matter was settled and that Brenda would not be invited when I was around in the future. Our hangout involved typical teenage activities like creating a list of enemies and prank calls. I specifically mention those examples because I offered my input on the list. There were kids I liked that they did not, and suggested we use different colors for ratings based on our personal preferences. They mainly brushed it off and continued with their approach. Afterward, we made prank calls using a website I suggested, but they transitioned to using Google Translate instead. Despite my reminders, I stopped pushing since I didn't want to come off as controlling. I felt uncomfortable nearly the entire time, and even now, I cannot pinpoint why. Days passed, and I continued to feel uneasy. I confided in Rob about everything, and he suggested I should probably cut them off. Unsure about that course of action, I sought a second opinion from another friend, who is also Rob's best friend and unfamiliar with my situation, and he advised me to distance myself or potentially sever ties. Still indecisive, I opted to distance myself to see how things unfolded. This is a crucial detail. I spoke with 3 additional adults who agreed with this approach. I began skipping our usual morning spot at school. I still had Lila in class but did not make any moves yet. I was upset, maybe a bit irritable, particularly due to my period, so perhaps Lila sensed my mood. After a few days, I received a text from both Lila and Bella Lila. Hey, we need to talk. When I host something, Brenda might be invited. I know there's some history, but honestly, what transpired wasn't that serious. She asked for someone's number, and I feel like this situation has been blown way out of proportion. When you made a significant fuss about it earlier, it placed both Bella and me in a difficult position. We were excited to have Brenda around, and I ended up uninviting her due to this matter, which triggered a significant conflict between Bella and me with Brenda. Honestly, it hurt her deeply, and at one point, I feared she would stop communicating with me altogether. Moving forward, I need you to handle this more maturely. If Brenda is present, you don't have to be her best friend, but civility is necessary. I can't continue to tread lightly or let this create unnecessary drama. For clarity, I hadn't communicated with her at all. My response might come off as aggressive, but that's not my intention. Let me share my perspective. In the past few months, I have made an effort to reach out, but I received no replies. I've discussed this with both of you, yet nothing has changed. It feels like my boundaries have been disregarded. Yes, you have every right to invite anyone to your house. However, if you bring someone I dislike into the mix, it likely won't end well. I don't understand how that caused a fight between you, and I apologize for that, but I am not part of that group anymore. It seems like we have drifted apart significantly. Before you mention maturity, I took a step back to observe what might happen. From this viewpoint, things don't appear promising. I haven't been unkind to Brenda or engaged with her at all during this period, so that's civil behavior. She doesn't need to avoid me because I won't mistreat someone I don't particularly like, but I do intend to limit my interactions with her, essentially ignore her. I hope this doesn't come across as egotistical or rude, but have you even considered that I've been emotionally distancing myself because you have not replied? Now you notice? Great, I suppose. I feel somewhat offended. I don't even know if this can be repaired. I recognize you're making an effort to maintain our group, but I've clearly stated my boundaries. Thank you. Zoxo Op. As a side note, Lila was not fond of that ending. After sending that, I waited for a response, which didn't arrive until the following day. Here's what they said, Lila. I'm confused as to why you would react to a simple request with such a dramatic rant and end it with Zoxo. That's inappropriate, op. The reason Bella and I aren't active texters is that half the week I sprint from school to home for 5 seconds to change, then rush to practice, and afterward, I come home to shower and sleep. Now, imagine what it's like for Bella, who juggles 1,000 commitments. You stay home all day and stay up until midnight, so you expect everyone else to cater to your schedule, which is unfair, considering Bella and I cannot fulfill that role. I'm not saying you have to be in the same space as Brenda. I'm merely warning you that if I host an event, she will probably be present. You don't have to come if you don't want to. That won't hurt my feelings. Regarding the altercation, I mean that you made me feel guilty about my decision. While it's not your fault, the actions you took put me in a terrible position. I came to you for support, which you sought after, and yet I'm done doing that. Bella, I share your feelings. I understand that you both dislike each other. However, I believe that if you communicate openly, you might find some common ground. The best approach is to step back and try to understand each other's emotions. It's possible you did not intend to, Kylan, but you have hurt us. The most productive course of action is for us to attempt to comprehend and grow from this. Next time, we should aim for a better resolution. The past does hold weight, and we need to acknowledge that. It reaches a breaking point, and now it has become frustrating. I must admit, I was quite upset and responded with this me. Perhaps it would be better if we just ceased communication altogether. You've hurt me too. Clearly, there's no point in explaining my perspective anymore because you aren't acknowledging it. Goodbye. An hour later, I reconsidered, wanting to repair our friendship based on advice from my boyfriend's mother. She mentioned that text messages might convey one meaning while the sender intends another, so I decided to send a video to express my feelings, allowing them to hear my voice and see my body language. After I finished sending the videos, I notified them that I had done so, and one of them replied, stating they would respond when free. I thought, that's wonderful. This might actually be working, and felt optimistic that we would ultimately resolve our issues and remain friends. After that, I maintained my distance, except for moving away from Lila in class. I hoped they would reach out, and eventually, I received texts a week later. Lila, me and Bella have discussed this extensively and come to a conclusion regarding our friendship. This will be our final message, and while we acknowledge there's more to unpack, we feel compelled to address a few key points. To get straight to the point, if you believe I'm in the wrong, you're welcome to analyze the first paragraph. However, if you seek clarity and closure regarding the situation, please read through the entirety of this message, though I cannot compel you to do so. The truth is, this friendship is going nowhere. You stated that I overstepped my boundaries by inviting someone into my home. If you don't want to be around her, then you don't need to come over. In my boundaries, I expect kindness from my friends and respect in my house. You mentioned that we invent more problems as time goes on. Did you consider that perhaps I have shown leniency and tried to accommodate you because you're incredibly sensitive and dramatic? Did you think we've been suppressing our emotions to spare your feelings? If we had addressed this sooner, don't you think we could have avoided this situation? Surely, you realize why Lila and I have shifted our focus. There is so much more I could say, but I will refrain. I don't believe any of us are bad friends. It's simply that our beliefs and personalities clash too much with yours. Lila and I share many traits, making it easier for us to connect. I want you to understand that we can all strive to improve ourselves, and after all, this is high school. We're still figuring out who we are. So please understand that this is not entirely your fault. Don't feel too bad. I hope I didn't sound rude and that it didn't affect you too negatively. In your words, Zoxo, Lila and Bella, I feel that we've encountered too many issues, all handled poorly, and there have been numerous instances of questionable behavior from all sides. While some of this may not directly involve you, it has still occurred. I agree with Lila regarding the way we've had to downplay many situations for your benefit. We know how you can react, and despite the context or your concerns, it isn't acceptable to treat every hiccup as a catastrophic event. When things don't align with your expectations, you tend to escalate them, and all we hear is, "Woe is me." That's not constructive behavior or maturity. I personally didn't intentionally distance myself until recently. When you reach out, It's often when I'm busy, and by now, I would expect you to understand my packed schedule, which typically consists of school, wrestling, home, karate, back home, and homework repeating endlessly. This is not exclusively about you, and it's unfair to assume everyone else is catering only to your needs. Recently, I've attempted multiple times to engage with you in person. When I do, you dismiss me and turn your attention to Rob. While that's acceptable, considering you could easily spend time with him, it's not reasonable to complain about us not initiating conversations. We've shared countless experiences as friends, and circumstances are shifting whether for better or worse. It's happening. I spoke with my dad regarding this situation, and he believes we should end contact. I shared the complete details, and he feels that what's occurring isn't acceptable on any party's side. In my view, moving forward, I will refrain from making additional efforts to reach out. This entire situation has become a distraction from wrestling, karate, and school tasks. I cannot manage it any longer. That was last Tuesday. I chose not to respond. I feel deeply confused as I receive mixed advice to move on and possibly pursue friendships with others. An adult suggested this. However, I am left utterly bewildered and saddened by their unexpected backlash. I've been reflecting heavily on whether I am in the wrong. Am I a bad person? Am I the antagonist in this situation? Story 2. I let my partner leave after a fight about voicing my feelings. He said if he took an Uber, it would be over. I didn't stop him. I am feeling extremely perplexed at the moment, and to be honest, I feel rather desensitized. This is likely to be a lengthy message, so I appreciate your patience with me. Before I delve into my current predicament, let me provide some background. My partner, who is 42 years old and whom I will refer to as P, is undoubtedly the most remarkable person I have ever encountered. Prior to our romantic relationship, we were very close friends for many years. When we first crossed paths, we had both recently escaped harmful and abusive partnerships. He expressed a desire for us to explore a relationship, but I was not in a healthy state of mind. Less than a year prior, my children and I had to relocate to a new area, far away from our home, friends, and family, due to domestic abuse from my former partner. We had to move quickly while my ex was in police custody, which was traumatic, and I was still dealing with ongoing court cases in both criminal and family jurisdictions. I have to confess that I did not manage the situation well, and I cut off communication with P when he indicated that he wanted to take our relationship to the next level. It was a regrettable choice, I acknowledge that. Eventually, after approximately 8 months, once all my legal matters were settled and I felt prepared to move forward with my life, I reached out to P. I apologized for my previous behavior and tried to clarify that I did not wish to enter a serious relationship and involve him in my complicated life. He completely understood, exhibiting no judgment or negativity, only acceptance and appreciation for my apology. We were able to move past that, and our friendship continued to flourish. Now, onto our present situation. We have been in a relationship for a few years. We have experienced a few disagreements, but what couple has not? My concern now is that this time feels significant. I am expecting our daughter and am due to give birth next week. Discovering that I was pregnant was a complete surprise. I had been experiencing health issues and had been advised that I would be unable to have more children for various reasons. This was not a major issue for us, as I already have 3 children and P has 5 from prior relationships. We had previously agreed that having another child was not part of our plans. However, I learned of my pregnancy while undergoing medical clearance for a hysterectomy, which my doctor recommended due to ongoing health concerns. As you can imagine, discovering I was expecting was overwhelming. I informed P, who was equally shocked and full of questions I could not answer. I had no idea how far along I was since I had not had a menstrual cycle for more than 6 months and had been told by medical professionals that I was unlikely to ever have another. Scan day brought another surprise. I was nearly halfway through my pregnancy. I had no symptoms, no nausea, no fatigue, nothing. I felt somewhat bloated, but that was attributed to my medical history and was expected to resolve following my hysterectomy. This pregnancy has been far from straightforward. I have had almost weekly appointments, with scans every few weeks. For the last 10 weeks, I have had to administer injections to myself up to 6 times daily for various reasons. I am on blood thinners due to the risk of clots, and I also have gestational diabetes. Because of these complications, I will find out in a few days whether I will need a cesarean section to deliver our baby. Naturally, I am willing to do whatever is necessary to ensure the safe arrival of our little miracle, yet neither of us is hoping for a cesarean or a prolonged hospital stay. We long for her to come home so that we can simply enjoy being parents to this extraordinary baby who has transcended all expectations. I share this information as it illustrates the challenges P and I have faced to reach our current point. The bottom line is, it has been a lot to handle. It has not been easy, and there is still much more that I have not even mentioned. Now, here is where things have gone awry. P and I typically share a strong bond and maintain open lines of communication with each other. We touch base constantly, even when we are apart. It has always been this way. We never go more than a few hours without one of us checking in. I frequently inquire about P's work since he is in security, and sometimes I worry about his safety. At other times, he calls me to vent and decompress after a frustrating incident at work. P also ensures that I am eating well and not overexerting myself during my pregnancy. It is in these small gestures that he shows he is thinking of me and genuinely cares. However, lately, I have detected a shift. I feel as if he has begun to nitpick things I say. For instance, during a conversation, I would occasionally say, "Okie dokie," in agreement, and out of the blue, P would respond by telling me to stop saying that. It's annoying. I chose not to question this and simply apologized, although it seemed out of character for him. A few days later, I had an appointment regarding the pregnancy, nothing major, just some routine blood tests and a quick examination of the baby. P did not attend. He had worked a long shift the previous day, got home late, and had a restless night, so I assured him I was completely fine with him staying home to rest. My appointment was early, and he had already been awake for about 29 hours with hardly any sleep. He was exhausted. After some discussion, during which I agreed to call him as soon as I finished my appointment, he decided to stay home and relax. When I exited the appointment, I called him as promised. Everything appeared fine but was still complicated, as there are many possible outcomes for this pregnancy, even at this late stage. I did my best to explain the situation after being given extensive information. P began expressing how surreal it all was and how quickly time had flown by. He reflected on all the ups and downs we had experienced with the baby, but noted she would be with us soon, and we were so close to finally holding her. Hearing the excitement in his voice was heartwarming. As he made each statement, I responded with "I know," as everything he said rang true. Then, unexpectedly, P said, "Stop saying I know." I replied, "Well, I do know. If you keep saying things I already understand, I will continue to respond with, 'I know.' Try telling me something I don't know." We engaged in some playful banter and ended up laughing, which seemed to diffuse the situation. That was until last night. I had not seen P for a couple of days. I had a few things to address at home, while P had work, spent time with his children, and went out with a friend. They had a couple of drinks, and P was not inebriated, he merely had a few. P then called to let me know he was on his way to my place and wanted to share details about his day. As our conversation progressed, I acknowledged his comments and followed up with questions. Again, there it was. P said, "Stop saying okay." After he told me this for the third time in a week, I felt compelled to confront him. I inquired why he continued telling me to refrain from saying certain things, stating that it felt as if he was nitpicking. P insisted he was not nitpicking, but merely asking me to stop saying specific phrases. I attempted to convey that this was now a repeated pattern, and it was becoming bothersome. P quickly redirected the conversation, questioning why I was being irritable. I clarified that I was not irritable, just trying to understand why he kept insisting I stop saying things. This time, P responded with, "Oh God, is this pregnancy hormones or something?" I informed P that hormones had nothing to do with it. I simply wanted to express what was on my mind, but he was not listening. Despite further discussion, P persisted in talking over me and continued to label me as moody. Eventually, I became frustrated. P had never made me feel this way before. It was as if my thoughts and feelings were insignificant to him. He casually dismissed my concerns by repeatedly calling me moody and attributing it to my hormones. We did not conclude our conversation on good terms. Later on, P sent me a message asking if it was still acceptable for him to come over. I replied that it was fine as long as we left the Discord behind. I was not interested in an argument, having already expressed what needed to be said, and I believed it was settled. P then remarked, "I won't bring up anything, I'll just come in, go upstairs, and keep silent." This irritated me. I responded that if he planned to do that, how was that not continuing the disagreement? I also pointed out that if he thought I would tolerate having my feelings disregarded only for him to arrive at my home to punish me for expressing an opinion, then he was mistaken. I do not need additional stress or to feel uneasy in my own space. P proceeded to tell me that I was the one being unreasonable because of the way I had spoken to him. I explained that my frustrations stemmed from him not acknowledging how his behavior affected me, and his reaction demonstrated that he simply did not care about something troubling me. I further articulated that what he was saying was unfair. P refused to listen to my concerns, repeated the labels of moody and hormonal, and grew angry when I finally became irritated by his dismissive behavior. This is where I might have crossed a line. During our exchange, P attempted to compare me to his ex, saying she couldn't admit when she was wrong either. I saw red. My response was to point out how amusing it was that he mentioned her, given how many times he had shared stories about her shouting at him, disrespecting him, accusing him of various things, and wearing him down until he snapped, only to then be regarded as the villain for defending himself. I reminded P how manipulative that behavior was and how deeply it affected him, yet he was doing exactly that to me at that moment. P became angry once more and accused me of being out of line for making the comparison. I responded, "So, it's acceptable for you to compare me to her, but when I do it to you, you don't appreciate it." Throughout this entire interaction, P was still en route to my house and ended up sitting outside. He informed me he had arrived and all I needed to do was invite him in, but I could not bring myself to do that. I was too troubled by the events, and all of this began from his reluctance to accept my feelings on the matter. I felt as though he was attempting to manipulate me, which made me uncomfortable. Additionally, after he stated he would just come in and ignore me, I questioned the purpose of him being there. He repeated that he was ordering a ride, and I did not respond to discourage him. He had already demonstrated that my feelings were irrelevant, and I did not want him to witness my emotional state. I did not want to appear vulnerable in front of him after everything that had transpired. Ultimately, he made it clear that if he left in the ride, our relationship would be over, and our interactions would solely revolve around the baby moving forward. Despite this warning, I did not stop him. I reiterated that he made me feel as though my emotions did not count, which is unacceptable. He disregarded my expression of needing support when he was unwilling to listen, and then turned it back on me as if I was wrong for feeling differently than him. Now, he wanted me to let him in only to further punish me with silence in my own home, and again, he was not listening. I was unwilling to accept that scenario. With that, he called for his ride and returned home. Should I have stopped him? Am I simply being overly sensitive? Am I in the wrong for responding to how he treated me? I am truly uncertain. He sent me a text this morning inquiring about my well-being and that of the baby. I mentioned that the baby is doing well and is active. I chose not to mention my own well-being because I do not believe he is particularly concerned about me. Story 3. My girlfriend ended our 5-year relationship, then my mom had a heart attack. Just days later, I totaled my car and got injured. Jumping straight in, it began in August 2023 when my girlfriend of 5 years unexpectedly informed me that she wanted to end our relationship. We had spent 3 years living together with my mother and had just moved into our own apartment that year. I thought we could complete the lease together to spare her the immediate burden of finding a new place while I did not face the full rent alone. It turned out I was mistaken. She had emotionally detached herself from me months prior and only acted on it when she had completely moved on. This led to a situation where one person was in dire need of support to move forward while the other wanted to concentrate on herself. The following month was nothing short of emotional torture as I clung to something that had already disappeared. Being deprived of physical and emotional comfort from her while she rushed into relationships and encounters with others was enough to create the longest-lasting trauma I would endure during this period. We eventually went our separate ways after I arranged for our lease to be terminated early, and I returned to live with my mother. At that time, my mother was my greatest supporter. We both lived and worked together, and she was my lifeline, earning my deep love and appreciation. Unfortunately, it took only 5 months, until January 2024, for my life to fall apart once more. On January 3, 2024, I was driving home from work when I noticed a car on the side of the road with emergency vehicles surrounding it. I went around it and continued home, only to learn later that it was my mother's car. She had suffered a heart attack while driving home from our workplace and tragically passed away that day. I was utterly lost and did not know what to do next. Fortunately, my brother and his wife quickly offered to take me in. Just 2 days later, on January 5, 2024, I was on my way to my father's house to store some belongings when I was rear-ended by a van. My car was totaled, and I sustained a herniated disc in my neck, which resulted in daily headaches for the next 8 months. After my period of mourning, I immersed myself in work, juggling 2 jobs and averaging 65 to 80 hours a week between them. However, my attempts to avoid confronting my grief and the numerous environmental changes I had experienced led to a decline in my productivity. I began receiving verbal and written warnings for tardiness and lack of performance. Frustration seeped into my home life, where I was living with my brother, his wife, and their 2 young daughters. My brother had worked diligently to build a career and family he could take pride in. All they wanted was to help restore the little self-esteem and confidence I had before these tragedies struck. I recognized this, but felt that I was consistently letting them down. The pressure from these perceived expectations became overwhelming, prompting me to consider yet another environmental change. In April 2024, I moved out of my brother's house and into a duplex that I would be renting with a high school friend. He was set to join me in June, as he needed to tie up some loose ends before the move. Despite relocating to a place merely a 2-minute walk from one job and a 10-minute drive to the other, my ability to wake up on time for work remained inadequate. Living alone ultimately hindered my attempts to avoid and numb the immense pain and suffering that had been pursuing me for months. I dealt with depression, or what I believed to be depression, for years, experiencing episodes marked by a lack of enjoyment, low motivation, and suicidal thoughts. The worst episode I had ever encountered was approaching fast. Symptoms included crying spells, difficulty concentrating, a sense of emptiness, lack of motivation, and daily suicidal thoughts that overwhelmed me for hours. This culminated in a frantic Google search for inpatient mental health facilities, where I called the first number I found and booked myself a flight to Florida. I informed my employers that I would be absent for a month and left immediately to attend Still Mind Behavioral Health in Fort Lauderdale. At the time, I did not understand the concept of a residential facility. I assumed it was similar to an outpatient clinic where one would simply stay. I was mistaken. All of my belongings were taken, and I quickly learned that if I wanted to leave, I would need to either fight hard or endure a 30-day stay. I chose to endure, believing this place was designed to improve my mental health. I was monitored around the clock by staff and cameras, sharing space with individuals who inevitably triggered anxiety in me. To be clear, I believe I came out of this experience better than when I entered, but it required a very long 30 days of self-work. Upon returning home, my roommate had already moved in. I decided to take some time before going back to work, likely a mistake. The progress I had made in Florida began to dwindle as I struggled to readjust and maintain routines. I started avoiding friends and family, neglecting my self-care. I eventually decided to quit one of my jobs without even returning from my break. Overall, it was not the worst decision I had made. Realizing I needed additional support, I enrolled in an outpatient clinic where I experienced genuine progress for a time. It was there that I was diagnosed with bipolar Roman II, a diagnosis I still struggle with today. Sadly, shortly after I enrolled, the facility closed its doors due to financial difficulties. However, I managed to establish a solid foundation that enabled me to regain some stability, as the following months passed with relatively few issues. I did have moments of simply yearning for the love and affection I had lost with the passing of the 2 most significant women in my life. However, this period continued into January of 2025. For context, I live in New Orleans. The first day of 2025 began with the terrorist attack on Bourbon Street. My roommate and I narrowly avoided it, as we had considered going there for New Year's. Tragically, my coworker was not as fortunate. He lost his life in the attack, and I work alongside both his father and brother. While I was not particularly close to this coworker, just 3 weeks later, a coworker I was close to suffered what I can only assume was a severe mental health crisis. On January 18, 2025, Glenn Bone Jr. committed a horrific act at his home, resulting in the tragic deaths of his wife and 2-year-old daughter, while injuring his 9-year-old and 13-year-old daughters. The situation ended when police arrived after being alerted by the 13-year-old and shot Glenn after he brandished a firearm. None of this was comprehensible to those of us who knew him, and we had no luck uncovering any further insights in the days that followed. All I can hope for is that those 2 little girls never have to face any more hardships. I learned of this tragedy while working at a Mardi Gras ball. I continued through the day feeling shocked and numb. However, that would not be the only incident of the day. At the ball, I encountered the drummer from my old band, who is now a detective for the New Orleans Police Department. He had been present on the night of the Bourbon Street attack, and we discussed both that night and my coworker, one of the victims. I discovered that this man, whom I had not seen in years, was the first on the scene and attempted to resuscitate my coworker. I realized that the family had very little information about the circumstances of his passing, and that it would likely mean a great deal to them to know he was not alone in his final moments. The weight of delivering such heavy news to them led me to write a letter to his father instead. He was very appreciative. Now we come to today, a year and a half since my breakup. 1 year, 1 month, and 3 days after my mother passed away. 1 year, 1 month, and 1 day since my accident. 7 months following my stay at a residential mental health facility. 1 month and 5 days after a local terrorist attack. And 19 days since my coworker lost his life after committing a horrific act against his own family. I am unsure how to conclude this vent aside from expressing that, despite how difficult this journey has been, I feel that I am in a relatively good place for myself. I hope that those aware of my situation see me as someone who has taken these experiences and emerged better than anticipated. I still miss my ex, my mother, and my coworkers, but I also continue to move forward.